Hi, my name is Mark. I'm a concept artist and illustrator working for the entertainment industry. In this tutorial, I'm gonna try to paint a creature what turned into stone. So my main idea was to show a really old stone, a giant turned into stone up on one of the hill, on a hillside. So first, I just tried to block in the overall shape of the character. So I quickly just started to sketch in to make like a really rough line sketch to get a feel of the overall pose. And I didn't want it to get into more detail because I wanted to focus more on the materials. So after this line sketch, I just grabbed an image what I had in mind about a Scottish hillside, just to get the general colors. And after I had the background, I created another layer below the lines, and with a simple round brush, I started to block in the silhouette of my giant. This really helps because it helps me figure out how much space does the character takes up from the piece, and also helps to block in the main colors what I want and play around with the composition. So now, as you see, I've cut up the background and changed the composition a bit, and just picking the colors from the background and quickly painting it over, just to get an overall feel, a more painterly feel for my illustration. Because as it's a character-focused piece, I'm not really worried about the resolution of the background I grabbed. So because I'm gonna paint it over anyway. I just use the background more like a color, more for the color palette. And the next step, I started to paint inside the silhouette, and the main thing is blocking in the lights. So on my background reference, the lights were coming from the left, from the upper left. So I tried to make this similar lighting conditions on my character as well. So I just quickly blocked in the lights and the main cast shadows. And on a second layer, I picked an overlay layer, and I'm blocking in the first pass of the texture. So I'm blocking in the shadows, but I'm using a really rough painterly brush, and I'm also adding extra colors what are coming from the surroundings. So I started to add more browns and greens, and these are all coming from the background, because it's really important to match your character, and especially if you're trying to paint more realistic materials, to match your character to and the materials to the surroundings and to your background, because you're trying to create a cohesive image. So, and I'm keep doing the same process over and over. So, like the next step is I created another overlay layer, and I'm sort of layering up and going into more and more details, but without zooming in to the image. So I just picked a different texture brush, and I'm trying to achieve a similar visual noise what you can see on rock surfaces. And now I went back to the background. I always like to switch back and forth, because as I move further with my character and with the painting of these stone materials, I also like to balance out the lights and the shadows in the background, So always try to handle your image as a whole instead of just focusing on one particular part, because it's really easy to get lost in the details. So now you can barely recognize the photo what I grabbed, and it was a really crappy photo as well. So it was really low resolution. So now I went back and I pushed back the line work a bit more to make it less prominent, and now I'm going back and adding a bit more noise again, but now I'm trying to focus more on the shapes, like the shapes inside the character. So trying to emulate a bit of moss, a bit of weathering on the surface of the rocks, and it's still far away, but it's shaping nicely, and I'm trying to get to the point where I sort of see what is inside those big shapes. And now I'm losing the lasso tool, and I'm keep using the same rough brush just to get a bit more edge variation and to differentiate the various forms from each other, and to add more core shadows on Giant. And now this is where I start more the fine detailing. So adding the first set of cracks on the rocks, and just to see where. So breaking up the bigger shapes into smaller shapes, and I'm just so all the random details what I've put down with the texture brush now guiding me to the smaller details. So it's pretty much improvising and going with the flow of the random details. And okay, I know I wanted to create a face, I know I wanted to create a beard for the Giant, but still. Those random details could be really helpful. With these lines, I'm also trying to follow the direction of the shapes. So as like the arms or the legs are turning, I'm trying to follow the directions of those bigger forms. If you're trying to paint realistic materials, it's always helpful if you try to keep some sort of a balance between the smaller details and the bigger ones. And so, like, I'm having these bigger, more plain shapes with a bit of noisy texture, and now I'm getting into the more small lines, all the smaller highlights. And you can handle these really, really consciously. So if all those parts where you put more details or more sharp lines, or where your edges are getting more sharper, those could be your focal points. So you can really drive the viewer's eye there. The other thing what is really important is to try to add a bit of history, a bit of backstory, even to your materials. So I imagine this Giant turned to stone by some kind of witch, but this whole thing happened centuries ago, and it's just staying there like a huge statue. So that's why some parts are already broken down. It is heavy weathered. You can't really recognize much details from his clothes and things like that. I'm always trying to come up with some sort of a story for myself, because it helps the visuals as well, and then you're not just blindly detailing and doing everything. So In the meantime, I flatten down everything. I always like to keep doing that at certain stages. So after I'm happy with a stage, I'm usually flattening down my character and just creating another layer group with everything, and then refining parts. So I just resized the arm because I wasn't fully satisfied with it after flipping the image, and refine the silhouette to match to my textures and to my crack lines. And I'm going back to the background now and to the surrounding parts because now I had like too much details in the character compared to the background. So the difference started to get a bit too overwhelming. So I went back to the background and started to add more noise, more details there as well. It's part of integrating your character into the background. I'm starting to add more grass bits. How the grass, I imagined how the grass overgrown this this creature what turned into stone. I'm usually using like different texture brushes for stuff like this, and I don't like to use like grass brushes for the grass because it becomes too artificial. So I'm just using these weird brushes to put more moss and foliage onto the creature. And I also imagined where could other grass and moss grow on top of the giant, and I also added moss on the head and on the surfaces facing upwards. It's basically adding more definition and adding more details. Imagine it that you are trying to tell a story with the material. Adding more moss. And refining the silhouette again. I always like to step back to the silhouette because that's what drives our eye first. That's what we see first as the viewer. And bringing back some edge control again. Because I was really missing the really sharp edges of the stone surfaces. And I created an overlay layer and basically just started to put in all those really sharp highlights. Because in the darks you don't really have sharp edges. You only have the sharp edges in the lights, or more like where the lights and the darks meet. clarifying all the surfaces more. I decided to blur the background slightly, just to pop my character a bit more, and to unify it, and then add a couple more brush strokes. And then the really fine detailing. This is the part where we are pretty much established everything, and now I have to add all those little details, the crack lines and lights and all the small nuances. What are really gonna make the material realistic. And it's a bit time consuming, but it's absolutely worth it. And you have to focus on your, and again, you have to focus your detailing on your focal areas, and then move slowly and gradually move away from there. On a character, for example, the most important parts are the face and the hand. Going back and forth and zooming out always helps. And again, a bit of painting in the background, just pushing it back a bit more. Just adding a bit more detail to the sky. Adding some shadows and lights. How the sun is coming through the clouds. This is pretty much like starting the final step. So bringing in some adjustment layers to unify the piece. Adjusting the saturations, pushing the colors a bit. I always do this step after I pretty much finish the illustration. I also created an overlay layer to push the shadows and the lights a bit more. I'm not really worried about creating really dark shadows on really big highlights, because I handle these as illustrations and not. I don't think everything has to be super photorealistic. And this is really the super final details. Adding patches of grass, but really painting them on top. So these additional small details really gonna help sell your piece. And I thought as a final touch, it could make the piece much more happier if I would add just a couple of flowers here and there, like all those mountain flowers scattered around. It's barely recognizable, but they still can add a bit of extra color. Again, I'm doing a bit of color adjustments to one of my reference pieces. And I thought it would be nice to add like a real world guy to the whole scene, just to show this guy actually exists in our world, and it's not a fantasy piece. So I just grabbed one hiker guy and quickly blocked him into the picture. I cut out the head and resized it just to show that he's looking up to the stone giant. And just quickly painting him over. Because he was too different with the photorealistic, with the photo feeling of the whole painted piece. Yeah, matching him to the lighting scheme of the piece, adding some extra light, extra glow to the giant as well. Quickly checking the composition and fixing everything. Pretty last minute touch-ups, but I'm pretty much happy with the piece. So flipping them upside down and to the left, adding a couple of God rays to the background. Some contrast and color adjustments at the very end, but these are really just the final touch-ups, and yeah, it's pretty much ready. So I hope you learned something, and thank you for watching.